And Jeremy, this gets straight to an incredible body of reporting, largely from New York Times reporters, Sue and yourself and Jim Rutenberg, about the catch and kill scheme, which was never in dispute. I mean, a federal judge co-signed all the facts around the sentencing of Michael Cohen in 2018. Donald Trump was described as individual one, I think, over 20 times. It was disputed inside Maine DOJ, and Bill Barr and his team tried to minimize the mentions of individual one, and I think there was some back and forth about how much his role would be described. But at the end of the day, even with Bill Barr as Attorney General, Donald Trump is an unindicted co-conspirator in Michael Cohen's sentencing documents, and those are facts that it appears many of those facts could be admitted in this trial.
Right, Nicole, and through that and Alvin Bragg's indictment, we know an awful lot about the catch and kill scheme at the National Enquirer. And this wouldn't be, interestingly enough, the first time the National Enquirer has put its finger on the scale in presidential politics. Back in 2008, the Enquirer was the one that broke the story about John Edwards and his affair and the child out of wedlock that he had. And in the case of Donald Trump, of course, this is one other way that we see Donald Trump having a very transactional and symbiotic relationship with media that's very favorable to him. This is, I think, the most corrupt example of that. But you have, examples like the Enquirer printing stories that Ted Cruz's father was involved in the Kennedy assassination. And guess what? That makes its way into the 2016 campaign because Trump talks about it. Then you have the Enquirer launching, what was described in a recent New York Times Magazine piece about the Enquirer's role in 2016 as a sustained campaign to discredit Trump's political opponents, and most especially Hillary Clinton. And the Enquirer printed doctored photos that made Hillary look sicker than she really was and said that she had 6 months to live, but the only reason that she was on the campaign trail was because cruel Bill Clinton was making her do so. I mean, you really can't make this stuff up. But the Enquirer played a bigger role, and, for journalists, myself included, and who often wrote the Enquirer off as kind of this, this silly tabloid farce, it does have occasionally measurable impacts on presidential politics. And this trial, I think, is really bringing that to light.
I mean, I may be dating myself, but I saw the National Enquirer every time my mom went to check out of the grocery store. It was sort of, I mean, usually visible. Michael Steele, you have Michael Cohen on this weekend. I think you're the only live interview with Michael Cohen before the trial. Congratulations on that. I want to show you, because I think, and I know we deal with the facts on Earth One, and there's not a lot of debate among those of us living here, but the facts are so well established. They're co-signed by a federal judge. DOJ puts their imprimatur on it in the form of Michael Cohen's sentencing memo. And Michael Cohen testified before Congress about Trump's role in overseeing the conspiracy to catch and kill stories using the National Enquirer. Michael Cohen was the cutout. Let me show you that testimony.
In 2016, prior to the election, I was contacted by Keith Davidson, who is the attorney, or was the attorney for Miss Clifford, for Stormy Daniels. And after several rounds of conversations with him about purchasing her life rights for $130,000, what I did each and every time is go straight into Mr. Trump's office and discuss the issue with him. When it was ultimately determined, and this was days before the election, that Mr. Trump was going to pay the $130,000. In the office with me was Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization. He acknowledged to Alan that he was going to pay the $130,000, and that Alan and I should go back to his office and figure out how to do it.
Now, Michael, there are tapes of that as well. We played some of them in the walk-up to the beginning of this trial. But these are the facts, and it'll be fascinating to see what sort of defense Trump mounts.
Well, I think the defense, and this is something that Michael talked about on our show the weekend, is the idea that the effort to discredit, the effort to level up the fact that he, had lied. But who did he lie for? He lied for Donald Trump. It wasn't like he lied to protect himself per se. He lied to cover for Trump. And then got caught and then paid the price for that and went to jail for that. And I think that that's the hook that Trump and his team want this jury to be mindful of at every stage of this process, but especially when Cohen himself testifies. But Judge Merchan and others have already cleared the decks, if you will, saying, yeah, but what he's saying about this is true. It's credible. And that's enough to get in front of the jury as well. And that's the sort of yin and yang I think you're going to see play out, particularly with Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen's testimony, because it is damning. They were the direct actors who acted on behalf of the man, received the money to keep the mouth shut, right? To keep quiet, paid the money to keep the mouth shut. And at the center of both of those actions was one person, Donald Trump. And so how else would they know? Why else would they do what they have done? Michael Cohen is not going to go out and take out a $130,000 mortgage on his home if he ain't getting the money back. If he wasn't assured that he was going to get repaid. If he wasn't assured of what the money was needed for, right? He had no interest otherwise to go out and pay for Stormy Daniels to keep quiet for his boss. His boss wanted that to happen. So these are the storylines and the narratives that are going to hit hard, along with a lot of other corroborating evidence. And that's the other piece that Donald Trump is trying to mitigate against. Because even though they know what all of that evidence is, because they've been given it, right? They know how damning it is. And they certainly know how damning it is when it's layered into the narrative the prosecution is going to play out.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.